Clock just turned to 8:30, so as county clerk, I hereby call this meeting of the May 12th Finance Committee to order. We'll begin with roll call. Tom Duffy.
Here.
Stacy Hessel.
Here.
Ron Kinsley.
Here.
John Bigheimer.
Here.
Dale Schluter.
Here.
At the record show, we have a quorum. Would all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let the record show that this meeting has been publicly noticed to the news media as required by section 19.84 of the Wisconsin statutes. I'll begin by opening the floor for nominations for the position of chair of the committee. Once the chair is elected, he or she will conduct the election for the vice chair, should they so choose. A person receiving a majority vote of members entitled to a seat shall be declared elected. This vote shall take place by voice vote. If no majority is reached, balloting shall continue, including all nominees, until a majority is reached. At this time, I open the floor for nominations for the position of chair. Do I have any nominations?
I nominate Ron.
Do we have any other nominations for the position of chair? Any other nomination for position of chair? Okay, we have a single candidate on the ballot. We can call for a unanimous vote for the position. All in favor, say aye.
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 Same sign. Motion carried. Mr. Chair, would you like to take over?
Thank you, Linda. Thank you to the committee for trusting me and being chair for this committee. Next item of business is vice chair. So open for anybody to be vice chair. Any nominations for vice chair?
I nominate John Ringheimer.
Any other nominations for vice chair? Any other nominations for vice chair? Any other nominations for vice chair? Hearing none, take a unanimous vote for a vice chair. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Congratulations. Meeting agenda. The meeting agenda is set. Is there any changes in it? Hearing none, we'll go to number 7, public comment. Anybody have any public comment? Number 8, approve the minutes of the previous meeting of April 14th. Is there any corrections or changes?
Oh, I move we approve the minutes presented.
I'll second that.
Motion by Mr. Duffy, second by Ms. Hessel to approve as presented. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Number 9, treasurer's report. Sales tax, Jadine is out today. Mike, want to make any comments?
Sure. I think the last collection we got at the end of April might have been down slightly from a year ago, but I think overall this year so far, we're already ahead of last year's pace, which was, a strong pace for us. So right now it looks good.
Any questions, Lauren?
I do, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Mike, do you see, in 21, we had a surplus because of the excess sales tax that we collected and all the tourism and people that came up here. Do you see that happening in 22 as well? Do you see that trend, or I said?
Well, so far we do. Like I said, we're the first 2 or 3 months, we're already stronger this year than we were last year. So hopefully that carries out the rest of the year, but I don't have that crystal ball. It's looking like it early.
Mike, the other thing to keep in mind is that this doesn't indicate a lot of 2022 spending yet. A couple from spending back. I think we're all wondering if, in addition to tourism, e-sales was a big part of the uptick in sales tax last year. And stimulus spending last year with the price increases, inflation,
crystal ball's a little murky on what spending might be like this year.
Moving forward, number 10, ARPA funds update process. We have a resolution for the Civil Air Patrol that was talked about last month and also went to the full board.
I would just like to maybe provide an update. There was a question at the last county board meeting whether or not the county could actually fund the Civil Air Patrol. We did have our council look into it. Civil Air Patrols are specifically identified in state statutes as an allowable payment from a county. So there's no questions that way. It's just if we want to do it and how or where do we want to make the payment from.
Mr. Chairman, before we vote on that, let's look at the whole total picture. What are we going to do with the funds? Are we going to piecemeal it out? And if we do, we should almost give notice to the county that it's a free-for-all. Or maybe we can ask Andy to, what are neighboring counties doing as a hint, you know? They all have the same problem. I mean,
They are, some have been, I think I've seen two schools of thought. One is some push a lot of money out the door quickly to match some broadband projects that seem to be early on. Some of the bigger allocations went because before the final rule was set for ARPA, that was one of the eligible expenses, one of the eligible buckets was broadband or infrastructure. But from the county level, counties don't do much with storm sewers or water projects, so the third one was broadband. Now though that the final rules in place, and you can, most of the counties in the region can count all of their ARPA monies as lost revenue. They seem to be pulling back and talking about how to use them. I would say I haven't seen a lot of like the Civil Air Patrol requests going forward in other counties are small, and they're looking at like their own internal capital projects or spending within the county organization. Just in general, I have not caught into detail with other counties, but that's kind of where I've seen it's at.
well, is there any way we could have access to that? Like what's Russ County doing and what's Bayfield?
I know Russ County, out of the allocation they have there, they've only spent $300,000-400,000 on theirs. The biggest chunk was to voting machines for all the municipalities in the county. I can go get the other counties' information. One thing I was gonna, a couple things I wanted just to point out as suggestions is there's not, at least in my mind, a rush yet because you have until 2024, end of 2024 to allocate the funds, and to the end of 2026 to have them spent, otherwise you potentially have to return them to the treasury. So there's not, these need to go out. I think in terms of prioritizing, not specific program areas, there's some bigger ticket items. So out of the building project, you need to address the gap there. You've got some matching funds they'll need for the airport, for their runway project. Take those into consideration, and then outside of that, is there ways to take the ARPA money and leverage other funds to use it as match? And just as an example, I've talked to Gary at Highway about going after some of the bipartisan infrastructure dollars that are going to be competitive. They're coming into the state. Those will, I think those are going to be on 80-20. Where you can get 80% of your project funded if you have a 20% match. So if we could be successful at getting some of those, you would need match money for that.
Well, is it worth thinking about a moratorium on paying these monies out until we have a plan? Or do we let it go piecemeal and once the word is out, I say we're gonna have a line of people, all good causes. And the money will be, excuse the expression, pissed away, and what have you done with it, you know?
Yeah, as a suggestion, I would say it's potentially a moratorium, but like you said, if you're gonna piecemeal them out to set some ground rules, because I think the word might be out already, because I think I've been in a few meetings this week where I've heard ARPA requests or the suggested ARPA requests for smaller projects for organizations being discussed.
Well, you have ARPA priorities coming up on the agenda. And I think you told us last night, Andy, that we have 1.5 million left on our ARPA,
Unallocated, it's roughly.
correct, Mike? And what is left that we have to fund on the courthouse expansion or the new building?
Well, it was, yeah, it's approximately.
2 million?
That's what I'm thinking.
Stacy, go ahead.
Well, we gave the priorities task to the administrative committee. And until we have that priorities list, I think we have to take each request by case. So until there's a priorities list from administration, we have to look at every request that comes in. So that's just my opinion on it, that we should honor and respect every one that comes into us until the administrative committee gives us a priorities list.
Thank you. Yes. Mr.
I think that, I don't know if priority list is a good idea. I really don't. Because if we had done that early on, we never would have thought to include the cost of the bus or the senior resource center. So when that request came in, well, it's not one of our priorities, so skip that. I don't like that. I think our full county board can be trusted to make decisions at any given point in time about how to spend this money. If it's a good idea, we can vote for it. If we don't think it's such a good idea, we can vote against it. But times are ends by a priority list. It just doesn't feel right to me. It takes away some of our think about things and make decisions while we're sitting on the county board. So that's my take.
Everybody needs money, and I guess if we're gonna do that, then we almost have to put out a public announcement to the whole county. This pot of money's here, come on in, stand in line, and otherwise now is those who know about it are coming forth, making requests. There are good causes there that don't know that we're piecemealing money out, and so I guess give everybody a fair shot if we're gonna do that. Let them know that the money's available, and if that's the way we want to go.
With respect, Tom, I think everybody, unless you've been asleep for 6 months, everybody in Sawyer County knows we got ARPA funds. Especially every nonprofit and organized entity.
I don't think they know that the money is available by making an application, but maybe they do. I don't know, but I guess I'd rather err on the side of saying, if that's the way you want to go, then you put out a public notice. The funds are available, stand in line, and we'll open up the bag and hand out the gifts,
This
I don't
sounds,
know. What do you think? Tweety?
It's going to be true of our $3 million surplus. So I suppose we want some of that.
Ms. Hassel, go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the Civil Air Patrol's request for $5,000, just so we can keep this meeting moving along.
So we have a motion to approve the Civil Air Patrol request. Is there a second?
Can I have a point of inquiry? Depending how this vote, if this is a vote taken, and let's just hypothetically say it is turned down, can they come back again? Thank you.
Is there a second for the motion? Hearing no second, motion fails. But I think the Civil Air Patrol should pay attention to what's going on in the future. See where it ends up. So that could be on the agenda again, potentially. Right. Number 11.
Oh, before we get off that,
Yes.
how are we leading this issue? Are we just gonna let it lie there and come back next month, or what's the plan, I guess? Or isn't there a plan, or what?
Well, I think that they should pay attention to what's going on, and if we start handing out money to groups they should certainly apply again.
But who has the responsibility of presenting a plan to the county and the board? I mean, is it this group or the administration or who?
It is on the administration agenda, not the finance. ARPA fund priorities.
Okay,
Okay. So it's coming up at the next meeting, so.
okay.
Mr. Buckles, did you have something?
Yes, I do. You know, this ARPA fund, what, we got like 1.5 million. And like everybody's talking about, everybody's out there grabbing for this. My thought is to take whatever we got left and use it towards the courthouse. That way, everybody, all the taxpayers and everybody else is benefiting from this, whatever's left. That way, we don't have to worry about people wanting it.
Yes.
For what it's worth, I agree with that statement.
And two.
That's the, I've been saying since we started. That's okay. Mrs. Zomer, did you have something you wanted to add, please?
Just save me from public comment next time. I was just gonna provide some background on this particular organization. My name is Linda Zomer, I'm from Edgewater. This is my 9th 2-year start to the term. Civil Air Patrol used to be one of the organizations that would come on an annual basis to request funds from the county, along with the libraries and the Hayward Lakes Area Visitors and Convention Bureau. And at one time, even the Historical Society, until they came into some funds. And this was back during Chris Mayberry years. The board at that time, a couple of consecutive years in a row, did determine that they no longer wanted to fund the Civil Air Patrol as far as criteria, meeting criteria as an outside organization. So if this does come back, you might want to consider past actions if there were reasons then.
Thank you. Are we ready to move on? Ms. Hassel?
I just wanted to remind the committee that the ARPA funds are supposed to be used as COVID relief. So if people are needing the funds, that's what they're there for. They weren't allocated for us to use for building projects. They were allocated to assist in relief due to loss of income because of COVID. So we need to keep that in mind as well. I would assume that that would be appreciated.
Thank you. Ms. Hassel, I'll also share with you, I've been dealing with the airport and they do have COVID funds out there, also ARPA funds. And I'm seeing if they can help the Civil Air Patrol. I'm getting some answers, but I haven't got it totally answered yet.
Great.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to number 11, budget guidelines.
So just kind of a summary maybe for the new members on the committee. Under the administrator form of government, the operating budget for the county is initially county administrator's budget. And then later in the fall, when his budget is final, it will revert to the finance committee and the county board. But these are just some guidelines that Andy has agreed to use and try to adhere to as he puts the budget together for the county. And I think he just wants to share with the committee, these are the guidelines he's trying to follow in order to put that budget together. The guidelines are very similar to what Tom presented a year ago. You know, we're trying to keep the operating levy with a 0 increase. We know there's going to be some personnel cost increases. We don't know what raises are going to be yet. Usually that's determined late in the process when we see where the overall budget is heading. We don't know what retirement rates yet are going to be for next year. We don't know what health insurance is going to be yet for next year. So there's a lot of assumptions built into it at this point that we really don't get answers to until September, October, late in the process. But these are kind of the direction that we're going. We're going to try to stick to whatever net new construction goes. So that's our levy limit right now, is we're subject to whatever net new construction is. So whatever that amount is, we'll try to set the levy increase to that amount within the operating levy. So I guess this is really just informational for the committee at this time.
Mike, isn't this the year too that we have to go through labor negotiations with the sheriff's department? Will that affect our budget?
Absolutely. They will, the current contract expires at the end of this year. They will start, I assume, sometime this fall with negotiations, and you know, wherever that goes will absolutely impact next year.
Will our 21 surplus affect next year's budget?
Well, it can, to the extent you use some of those funds to cover some of those operating costs. You can do that. I would caution you to try and avoid doing that as much as you can. Because you're kind of setting yourself up for, if you do it first year, you're gonna have to do it second, third. It's just kind of an ongoing thing, or it creates a hole you're gonna have to fill in some other way. It's not that you can't, it's just, it really needs to be managed and watched.
I think it goes back to your question a few minutes ago, that looking at the surplus from last year, and identifying how was that surplus created, and how much of that is potentially sustainable in years ahead. Is there additional sales tax revenue or stumpage that we could budget into next year's budget? It's not necessarily using the surplus, but talking about why there's a surplus, and some of that money going to be there in future years.
I'm hoping, I've had some discussions with Andy, and I hope they continue before I leave. You know, this budget for the county, since I've been here, has been a very tight budget. We're trying to put some flexibility into the budget. So I'm hoping we can use some of that surplus to help alleviate some of the budget concerns that I have.
And Mike, now that we went down the road of short-term borrowing for capital projects,
Yeah.
Are we on that road forever then, or is there, do you see us not having to borrow some?
Well, it's an annual choice you have as a county to fund those capital projects. There's really not another way to fund those capital projects. You could use the fund balance, the surplus, but in a few years' time, you'll have used up those funds and they won't be available. So if you want to continue doing projects, capital projects, you're probably going to get back into a capital borrowing situation. But it's something that Andy will be considering as he goes through the budget process. Does he think we should use some of that for that? Or should we continue the borrowing? And it really is going to be a balancing act. It's a little part of the budget process to determine which way is maybe best for the county to go.
So within the outline that Mike discussed, given I'm new, Mike's retirement, the process to put together the administrator's budget is going to be largely the same as it has been. Right? Making any changes as far as the process and components.
And we normally get out to department heads in July, August.
June and July, I'm already updating the process reports we hand out to departments. Hoping to get them out June 1st, so the departments have June and July to prepare their budgets and then turn them into accounting at the end of July. We start compiling immediately. It's probably going to be September Finance and County Board, where we kind of get some preliminary results of where the budget came in and where it's headed, how far over it is.
Okay. Questions? Hearing none, let's go on to number 12. Resolution to designate general fund balance, discussion and possible action. Who gets to handle that next project?
I can start. So, like we just mentioned, with the surplus from last year, there's a few areas that shore up with some of the surplus. And a couple of the areas we're identifying in this particular resolution. You know, we've all heard about the concerns with Health and Human Services and their out-of-county placements and what that may do to the budget. they have very little fund balance now to go forward with. So one of the suggestions is, let's designate some of this surplus specific to covering the Health and Human Services fund balance going forward. And then the other option we're identifying there is, over the years, we've used resource development fund balance. There's a little bit remaining, but maybe this is an opportunity to reestablish some of the fund balance into that particular fund also.
Because we're gonna have more repairs to be done.
Yeah.
Any questions regarding the resolution? What's the wishes of the committee?
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution.
I'll second.
There's a motion by Ms. Hessel, second by
It's Righeimer.
second by Mr. Righeimer to approve. Any further discussion? Yes.
Can somebody read the?
Well, I'm not gonna read the whole thing.
Yeah.
But it's for Health and Human Services.
Yes. Actually understand. That's.
No, that's fine. We need to know what we're voting. All right. So we
I
have a
can't
vote.
hear Mr. Schluter at all.
He did not see the resolution. He wanted to look at it before we voted, so he knows what he's voting on.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So now we have the motion and we have the second. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Does that need to go to the full board?
Yes.
Okay. Pass on the full board. Thank you. Number 13, carbon tax credit update.
So we discussed it at,
Land and water.
yesterday's Land and Water meeting. And so I've been working with Greg on this. We do have the draft marketing agreement from Blue Source. So I'm familiar with the draft marketing agreement. I've been through the process at my previous employment. And, so we have the attorneys lined up that we were used, or a number of the counties that used to look through it. I know where we ended up with our agreement in Russ County, what the changes were. So I kind of know where we're going to end up. I've talked to the attorneys. That's where they want to get Starter County's agreement. So we're not going to have any legal expense done right now. We're just going to hold tight on that. And Blue Source is going to make a presentation to the full county board next week. So you'll all have a chance to hear about carbon credits and proposals that Starter County received from them. Yesterday's meeting, some of the concerns were brought up. There was some discussion on taking the process slow and looking at this. There was some concern about a single entity being looked at to provide this service. But ultimately the decision or their support to have the presentation made to the county board so everybody can get a better understanding of how these carbon credits work.
In the market, are there more than one source of this?
Yeah, there are a number of companies out there that work with landowners to package up the carbon credits and take them to the marketplace to be sold.
And then again, looking at our neighboring counties, do you know what they've done?
All the neighboring counties that are working, all the counties in Wisconsin that are working with carbon credits are working with Blue Source.
Yeah. Okay.
I think this marketplace is evolving, so there have been some new companies coming in. And I've looked at this prior. I don't know how Starter County arrived at this decision. If you're a landowner, you might have already received materials in the mail from some of these companies offering to come in and work with you, because where I see a lot of the new companies coming in are working with small parcels. They'll work with you if you have an acre, 40 acres, 300 acres, and they aggregate number of property owners and take those credits to market them. I haven't gone out recently and looked to see if there are any companies that specialize in larger public forests or industrial forests or what the, who the other entities are at that time.
Okay, thanks.
Mr.
That
Sherman?
was my question, Mr. Chairman. Is, Andy, have we actually done an RFP and invited other companies to competitively bid for our carbon credits?
I don't believe you have.
Mr. Steven?
Yeah, a couple of things. Is that something we should probably do? Decide to go for? And, have any Wisconsin counties actually been far enough along in the process that they know exactly what they're going to receive for the next year, the next year, the next year?
I believe Bayfield County is the furthest along. I think they're probably ready to go to market. I haven't talked to them lately. They signed on well over a year ago. I think they signed on in 2020. So it's usually about an 18-month process, or up to 18 months before you actually see the sale happen and money proceeds come in. So I know they were ahead of the group. I can check to see if they've gone to market. The other counties that have signed on are in the, I'll just speak to Russ County. We signed on last fall. Over the winter, into the spring, the Blue Source contracted with a company to come in and put in, I guess I'll call them test plots. Throughout the county forest, they've set up these sections, probably about the size of this table setup, where they measure the growth that's occurring in the forest, and they have that data now. They go through it because that's how they determine how many credits the forest is producing through these test plots. And then once they determine that, then they can pull that data together and then take the credits to market.
When you say go to the market, just what does that mean?
So the sale is registered on the I think it's the American Carbon Registry. It's like a marketplace. It's almost like a stock exchange. And then they're listed, but then they start to market these to buyers. And essentially it's like I'll call it an auction. I don't know exactly, but they're looking for the highest return they can get on selling these credits in the marketplace.
Stacy wants.
Mr. Chairman. What is, I guess we'll go over this next week when they give the presentation, but obviously there's money, $1 million, whatever it is. What is it that the county's sacrificing, if anything? So if we do this, what can't we do? What's the balancing act here as far as what, well, we get the money if we do it, but then we can't do X.
Right.
Succinctly.
So I'll do the best I can to answer that. That's a good question. I'd also like Greg to answer that for you to make sure. But up to this point, my understanding and one of the reasons we went forward with this in West County is you're not sacrificing anything. It's like you're already managing the forest sustainably. I mean, for the county, you're already managing the forest sustainably. You have a certified forest. Doesn't affect the amount of acres you can cut because you're already doing the things you need to do to be eligible for the credits. It's like you're developing another marketplace for doing the work you're already doing. So we just had a forestry sale here last week. People bought cordwood for pulp, they bought it for hardwoods for mills. Those trucks will leave with those logs. Those sales occur. Now you just have another truck going to the carbon credit market. So it doesn't affect the way you manage the
So it
forest.
doesn't affect the way we manage the forest. Does it affect at all the money we make on harvesting the forest? So we're not sacrificing income, if you will, because we can't touch that.
No, you should should still be selling the same amount of wood you were selling before. That again is through the auction process, the bid process.
Okay.
Don't they, Andy, initially determine what your carbon level is? And you kind of have to maintain that level throughout the entire term of the lease.
Yep.
And maybe your risk is if there's some type of damage to the
Blow down
forest.
or fire. There is that risk that you lose some of your forest through natural causes, but built into your pro forma with the sale is a risk fund that money's going into in case that happens. You can buy down buy back those credits that you're not having available.
Thank you. Ms. Hessel.
I just want you to keep in mind that this company is from California, the Wisconsin forest industry. I've gone to a lot of meetings with them. They're not a fan of the carbon credit sales of the county land. So I think we need to also respect the forest industry and get them involved in this conversation, because that's our major income for the area. So if we want Wisconsin to look like California, this is a great thing. But if we don't, let's respect the forest industry as well.
Thank you.
Stacy, why do they oppose it? What's the reason?
Nobody likes the 40-year agreement, and they also don't like that this company is coming in from California, and basically they are regulating what you do with your forestry. When they've researched it, I went to a meeting in Douglas County. They're slowing the roll for a year. They're looking at everything. Douglas County is slowing it down for a year just to make sure that they are, they have the biggest county forest land, I think, in northern Wisconsin, if not the whole state. And they have slowed it down quite a bit just because of the concerns with the other foresters. So that is what their concern was.
Yes.
Need to sound like a radical, but we are sacrificing something, and that is the future health of our children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and other future generations by allowing major polluters to continue polluting. It's something we're going to get a lot of strong pushback on. Nothing is free. We're gonna, it's just going to allow pollution to continue.
Question, Mr. Chairman, that they're gonna give the presentation Thursday, but we have to take action Thursday?
No,
Thank you. That's fine.
it's
Make sure
coming
we
back
get
to
that.
committee. I just want the whole board to hear it.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Anything else about carbon credits? Moving forward, number 14, grant writing options.
So I've followed up with Extension and talked to them about the services they can provide. And they do have a grant workshop scheduled for this fall, but they'll do one for our department heads if we want to do that. I have not brought it up with the department heads yet. I'm going to start having monthly department head meetings, and I'll have that on for the first agenda and encourage pursuit of the grants.
Yes, go
Yeah,
ahead.
Andy, you mentioned that there's some competitive money out there, right, in infrastructure. And then last night at Public Works, we heard about this roundabout that they want to build, and that there's grants available to help subsidize those for safety reasons. And so we need to pursue, someone on the county needs to be a grant writer. Okay, in my opinion, Chairman.
Good stuff.
Yeah, I think we should aggressively go after this. If we even have to set up a grant writing department, there's going to be a lot of money out there that we just let sit there. I don't know, right now, no one's doing it, but I look at the Brookie, I look at all kinds of funds, and there's money all over. You just have to apply for it. But, so maybe, I don't know if besides the classes being offered, which is great, who actually from the county is responsible for looking for these funds? Is anybody doing this?
I would assume, without talking to them, that it's on a department basis. We don't have anybody centralized to be a grant writer for multiple departments. That any grants that are being sought or being done at the department, within the departments.
But somebody has to look and see what's available out there. I don't know who does that. I mean, they aren't going to knock on our door and say, why don't you apply? We've got to look for them and apply. I think it's a market we've just kind of let slip through our hands. I don't know what we do aggressively to, but I think we should really be aggressive and maybe give somebody that responsibility to, if that's their only job. I'm sure it'll, well, how about the tribe? You guys get a lot of funds out there.
Oh, we live on grants.
Do you have a separate department there?
Yes,
How many people do you have in that?
4.
We should have something like that. And I assume they just look and constantly look for funds that
Yeah.
new ones come up every day.
Mr.
It
Chairman.
would be a good idea, maybe, there are some larger counties that I think we maybe reached out to them to see what their, I mean, county grants are different than tribal grants.
Yeah, I know larger counties, there are some larger counties that have dedicated grant writers.
But what department would they be in? Just a separate department or?
The counties that I know, that I'm aware of that have grant writers, they're in their own. They're like, well, I'm assuming they're like essential service, so they're a division of the administration.
Go ahead.
Chairman, question, do you know of consultants that do this, so we wouldn't have to hire somebody to do it if we're not big enough?
That's, I know you can do that. I've done that in the past, like on one-off grants. You have a specific project that you know you're looking for grant funds, you can contract with a professional to research and write and do it.
Or just maybe have a consultant come in and look at versus hiring a head count. I mean, I don't know how much is laying out there, but a consultant will look at the whole thing and say, thank you.
In the past, the department heads have been watching for grants in their area. But that doesn't mean there's not grants that would fall through the cracks.
Right.
And how do we come up with another department we can't afford to pay for the ones that we got now? But it needs to be done, obviously.
Well, we have to have some initial cost to establish it, but usually it pays off handsomely.
Maybe you can look into it more for us.
I'll look into it. The only, the other comment I'd make is my experience, I've written a fair number of grants, is if you have a project, there's grants, but it's hard to find grants for operations to replace your existing levy dollars. Something to keep in mind too.
And I wonder if places like social services, there must be some grants out there for those kind of needs that or maybe we are applying, I don't know. But
Yeah, like I said, county grants are often different. I mean, there's some that are, I would call them more allocations, that we're a division of the state. So there are state monies that flow down as long as you make sure you're in line to get them. I think maybe the competitive ones, the ones we don't reach out to, are from nonprofits or foundations that have monies available for like social services.
can we keep that on the agenda for next time and then we don't lose it? See, let's follow it.
Yes, we can. Number 15, opioid settlement update.
I can just log back in here. So they have appointed a national settlement administrator. That was the next step in the process as far as the funds getting out to the local governments. So that it's a company, it's a business that was appointed last month. They are in the process of setting themselves up. The lump sum payments will come from the distributors and Johnson & Johnson, the defendants in the case. They'll pay the money to the administrator, and then they'll disperse it to the government entities. Within the next 30 to 60 days, all the local governments are supposed to get a more finalized number of how much the disbursement will be. The current estimate for Sawyer County is $726,277. That number could move because they have to take into account any attorney's fees, and there's money set aside for attorney's fees. Whether that's maybe more or less will affect the settlement amount. And then they've indicated that payments could start coming out to local governments in the third quarter, so maybe late summer potentially. At this point, it still appears to be it's going to be paid out over a period of years, up to 18 years. But there is still a discussion going on, what they call monetizing the settlement. So rather than getting that $726,000 over 18 years, you might be able to get a larger chunk of it up front. Probably less than that amount, but you have all the money up front to be able to utilize.
Andy, and there'll probably be spending requirements, the use of
Yes.
that money.
Similar to ARPA, there's in the settlement agreement, there's a whole appendix on eligible uses. Everything from prevention to treatment to purchasing Narcan for people to use. And there will be annual reporting for it as well.
And was there a work group put together, use of that money already?
Yeah, well, yeah, CJCC has a work group that has had a discussion on potential uses for the money. And this, I guess I'll also point out too, this money that the county is getting, some of it for the state is split 70-30. This is part of the 70% that's being directly allocated to local governments. The 30% is going to be allocated by the state, and some of that's going to be competitive to go after. And I believe our public health officer has been pulling together people internally here to look at preparing to compete for those dollars. How they can be used. I'd say the discussion on a regional level as to how people are going to use it is just kind of starting now, because there has been some requests from here to talk to our neighbors about partnering up on some, maybe a treatment facility or prevention programs rather than trying to do it alone. That's still early, but those discussions are starting to happen now.
Andy, is that 70% that the governor's dividing amongst all 72 counties? Is that equal to every county, or is it dependent on population or?
They haven't said yet, but it sounds like it's gonna be like in grants. But you have to apply to get those. He's getting 30% of the state is.
Okay.
The state's planning to have a process for people to apply.
So the 70% to all the counties, is that an equal amount to each county?
No, that's the 726 that's per capita.
When that money comes in, is that be kept in a separate account? Because we were talking before that we'd have to.
Yeah, we're gonna have that on probably next month's agenda to set up a separate account.
Any other questions regarding?
I have one, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Andy, talking about earlier Health and Human Services, can some of that go there to help them out?
It cannot replace any existing operational funds.
Okay.
You can't use it to replace money that you already have.
Well, I mean,
But
I guess Health and Human Services, they got people out for treatments for different things. I guess that's what I'm asking, if we go that route with it. It's just a question, I don't know.
I think that's a maybe, but probably likely, because it's pretty, I mean, it's a pretty substantial document. When I read through it, it's like you have a hard time not finding a way to make something eligible with what they set down as parameters.
Number 16, future agenda items. Well, we've named a few. Anybody have anything else that's out there that you'd like to bring up?
I'd like to bring up the issue, the winter depot, Mike. There were some contingencies there. We had some liability unless certain things were done. Is that closed now or?
Yeah, it's closed out, at least financially, it's all closed out. I believe any commitments we had have been final.
Okay, so
I think that's closed out. We were anticipating just financially, we had to advance some funds and we were waiting till the very end to get them back. We did get those funds back.
we did.
Sawyer County Housing Authority is asking to put their hands on so they can start purchasing cabinetry, flooring, stuff that's going to take a long time to get shipped in. To duplexes that they are.
Sure. What Dale's talking about is ARPA funds. County board approved an allocation to the Sawyer County Housing Authority for, I think it was $300,000. We've been talking with our auditors a little bit about the process with them. We need to put in place a subrecipient monitoring agreement with them. So because it's federal money, there's additional steps and guidelines you need to make sure you take as you're spending that money. And this agreement will kind of lay some of that out. So we're in the process of trying to get that set up. And once we have that set up, I agree, then I think we can go forward with the funding. Timeline on that,
I know you're very.
a couple of months, maybe.
Is there anybody else out there besides Stacy? Yes.
Well, I've always envisioned this committee, these people that are on it, to help us look at the Health and Human Services out of county placement amount that seems to be all over every year. I mean, it busts our budget every year. We never know what to project for that cost. There's gotta be some alternative where we can at least plan or budget for this. And I'd like to know too, Andy, what do other counties do? Are other counties locked into this and kind of just waiting on, hinging on who might have a mental breakdown in our county and be sent to these facilities for $2,000 a day and be there for a year? That we can't possibly budget or plan.
Well,
So
from the budget and planning standpoint, it is, you do your best to budget, project based on the clientele and have. What I would say other counties do is try to have a reserve fund. So, because a lot of this is, from a finance standpoint, is out of our control. If it's a court ordered placement or medical hold, it's gonna happen. Probably where other counties maybe approach things differently in how they handle programming they do to work with these clients so they do not end up in a out-of-county placement. That's probably where there's more variance on the county level. But from a fiscal standpoint, you're a risk manager because you really have little control once it happens. So you just try to make sure you've got the reserve funds and budgeted some money in there, projecting what it's going to cost. And I think then once it happens, then the human services side is back to managing the client and then trying to get them in a facility that meets the needs with the support of the county.
I think what's kind of causing some of the struggles right now is, historically, they did not have a lot of clientele in out of county, the long-term out of county placements. And remember, we're under levy limits, and so we're restricted what we can levy. They didn't have those costs. They were never really built into the budget at the levels we're at now with clients in these facilities. So we can't increase our base levy to cover it, yet we have, they're mandated by the judge to put these people in those facilities. So it's like, how do we think? Just historically, it put us in a bad spot.
That's why there's the ongoing discussions at this, with the state level, to make some legislative changes that would make this a little more manageable for counties, especially small counties. There's hope there because it's probably about 2-3 years ago where the counties really made an effort to change the costs associated with child protective services. Probably more money to the counties to be able to take that some of the burden off the budget.
At the same time, the judge makes that court order. He's a state employee, so the state should be paying the bill.
Yes. And the reason, Chairman, the reason I brought it up at Health and Human Services about insurance, some insurances, right, assist with that bill?
They will if they have, but you look at a lot of these clientele, they're not generally gonna have insurance.
Right.
And then once they're in the facility, they under the court orders, their Medicaid, Medicare are no longer available.
But sometimes, Andy, the company will pay the premium for the insurance, so you're not stuck with the entire bills.
Yeah.
Is that what?
But it may-
Well, I
Can
think
we talk about that or?
Well, I think the one that's in there now, they have insurance, but usually when you have health insurance, there's like a lifetime limit that they will pay out on your behalf. In this particular case, for that individual, they've hit that lifetime limit, so health insurance won't pay any. And now it goes back to the county.
I'd just like that to be an agenda item for this group.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
is there insurance the county can get for that, or are we self-insured for that risk?
There's not any, for the cost of the individual being placed, there's no insurance that we can get for that.
There's not like overall insurance program that the insurance company provides counties who have this risk they're facing, so it's just a matter of self-risk management.
Yep.
Thank you.
Anything else? Yes.
That's not a bad approach to take to our legislators. So legislature has to approve different types of insurance to be allowed to be sold in the state of Wisconsin. And I did read that the state of Minnesota is looking at giving insurance companies the right to sell businesses parental leave insurance for when their employee leaves on parental leave. That this insurance will kick in and pay for that. So that's an interesting point to take to our
Yeah.
legislators as part of the CAP team. Next time we have to call down there for a CAP meeting, we'll bring it up.
Excellent.
That's good.
Yep.
That's good thinking.
All right, hearing nothing else, meeting adjourned. Thank you for your valuable time.
And I have a resolution to sign, so don't go away.